right, welcome back to the Beast Game podcast. This is going to be a review for HBO's The Defiant Ones, Season 1. This is an interview-based 4-part documentary on the record executive Jimmy Iovine and producer/rapper Andre Young, better known as Dr. Dre. It details how they developed their careers and business relationship. It's directed by Allen Hughes, one half of the Hughes brothers. He's known for Menace to Society, did Presidents, From Hell, which is a Beast Game favorite, and The Book of Eli. The Hughes brothers also have a background in music video production for a lot of rappers during the 90s. Again, this is a 4-part series. I'm just covering the arcs of each episode. So the first episode begins with the Apple Beats headphone deal. Jimmy Iovine describes how the deal almost fell through because of leaks. Ultimately, things worked out in the end, with Iovine and Dr. Dre becoming a part of Apple. Really, Apple needed the existing streaming music contracts that Beats had, so they wanted to push forth Apple Music. The episode jumps around a bit. It goes into the background of Dr. Dre growing up in Compton, and you get some interviews with people from his past, his mom in particular. Dre started out pop locking and eventually DJing, and that led to him being a part of the world-class Wrecking Crew as a DJ, rapper, and producer, along with Yella and Lonzo. That episode ends for him with the Ruthless Records and NWA. Then you get some parts of Jimmy Iovine's family history. His grandparents came from Italy, moved to Brooklyn, and he was raised in a working-class family. Due to that, his family wanted him to be a blue-collar worker. Jimmy decided to go to college to avoid going to the Vietnam War. Eventually, he gets a studio job, but he's really just a part of the cleaning crew. He works his way up from being a recording engineer and eventually got to work with John Lennon. He worked his way up to being a producer, and at that point, he said that he got lazy. His big break came when he took a song that Bruce Springsteen wrote and that he didn't like, and Iovine gave it to another artist, and that helped him propel his career. The second episode gets into NWA and all their big moments. Jimmy Iovine eventually goes from New York to LA and becomes a full-fledged producer. He begins working with groups like U2. The main point for Dre is that his brother dies. He and DOC get close. DOC gets into a car accident. He loses his voice. Cube leaving NWA. The D-Barnes incident. And eventually noticing that his Ruthless Records contract wasn't right. So, episode 3 begins with Dre starting the Death Row era, and he's really trying to get out of his Ruthless contract. So, what is said is that Jimmy Iovine, at this point, is a mega producer, and he's also known for getting deals done and getting artists out of bad contracts. So, he starts his own label, Interscope Records. Contrary to at least what some people believe, Jimmy Iovine saying that he helped get Dre out of his contract. Eventually, when Death Row is officially signed to Interscope, Jimmy Iovine respects Dr. Dre's producing prowess. And also that episode really focuses on Interscope being a label. During the early 90s, it wasn't a very full-fledged label. And they started signing just random acts. They signed Gerardo, who's the Rico Suave, and also Primus, but eventually signed Tupac, Mark Wahlberg, No Doubt, and 9 Inch Nails. So there's a lot of focus on how that helped shape the label, and then eventually leading into Death Row. And kind of after Death Row came on the label, the focus was strictly rap music, hip-hop, and that eventually caused some problems just because of some of the violence that was associated with some of the acts on the label at the time. Also, that episode touches on the East Coast, West Coast beef, Tupac dying, so that's how the episode ends. The parent label for Interscope wanted to drop Death Row off of there, and Jimmy Iovine fought to keep it a part of the label because it was making a lot of money. The issue becomes, and kind of the arc of the episode, is what do you do with Death Row? Jimmy Iovine wants to keep it. I believe it's Tom Warner wanted to drop it, and Jimmy Iovine wins. Episode 4 really gets into the relationship that Jimmy Iovine and Dre develops. Dre wanted to leave Death Row, eventually does, starts Aftermath, and it flops immediately. Iovine sticks with Dre, Dre signs Eminem, so we know how that turned out. Meanwhile, late 90s, early 2000s, mid 2000s, Interscope is seeing a lot of hits from their artists. Gwen Stefani, U2, Black Eyed Peas, 50 Cent, Dre's Chronic album. However, it's overshadowed by music piracy, and there's the idea that Iovine's trying to look to the future. Interscope at this point is one of the largest labels, and Dre and Iovine start developing the Beats headphones, the Beats music service. A lot of that focus is on that, just what the future is going to lead to. So, thing is that Beats got bought up by Apple, and just how successful they've been since then. My thoughts on this is that it's a very well done documentary. I prefer these to biopics because you're getting the actual person, people involved in their lives, as opposed to some generated story according to what someone wants you to believe. I'm one of the hip hop heads for the Beast Gang between Mike and myself, and it speaks to me. I love hip hop music. I'm a hip hop historian. Even though some people don't like DJ Vlad, I watch a lot of his interviews. There were some omissions that I found kind of odd, particularly with Warren G not being anywhere in the whole documentary. That being Dr. Dre's brother. I'm not sure what happened with that, but that is really, really odd. But again, I really liked it. I like a lot of the clips that they played. The structure of it could have been a little bit better, but overall, I give this an 8. Again, there are some omissions. We could have gotten some interviews from other artists. Nas appears, Snoop appears, some record executives appear for Jimmy Iovine, but there could have been more. I think I'm just being a little greedy, but as I said, Warren G not being there, and also just some more NWA stuff. I mean, you do get Cube, and I think Yellow appears, but there's not a lot of Ren. I think the Jimmy Iovine side is covered well. But again, I give this an 8. And I want to close with something. And this describes people that are creatives, people that are artists, any artist in general. There's a line from Jimmy Iovine's ex-wife about being in a relationship with a genius. Because when you are an artist, you are a genius, in my opinion. She says that genius feeds itself. It needs to make its own hours. It needs not to talk when it doesn't want to because it needs to develop itself. And that is very hard in a relationship. And that's the Beast Gang Podcast. You can find more of our podcasts at beastgang.com, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube.